You ever walk into your workplace and it feels like the air changes, not because of stress, not because of deadlines, but because something unseen is working overtime. And that's not your imagination. That's not just bad energy. That's warfare wearing a uniform and a name badge. See, there is more witchcraft in the workplace than is commonly known. See, witchcraft in the workplace doesn't always look like candles and chants. Sometimes it's an email sent with the intent to discredit you. It's the smile that hides a strategy. It's a supervisor who pretends to mentor you but studies your rhythm so they can throw it off. It's a coworker who mirrors your speech, your walk, your tone until they start replacing you in rooms you built, right? Rooms you built the trust to walk in. Spiritual warfare doesn't clock out when you clock in. It shows up as envy, it masquerades as teamwork. It's in the subtle tone shift when your ideas suddenly become their ideas. It's in that whisper campaign that starts just as your promotion is being discussed. And the dangerous part, most people think they're just dealing with personality clashes. But no, you're dealing with energy assignments. Witchcraft at its root is manipulation of will. It's about control, getting to getting you to doubt yourself, to shrink your light, to question your intuition. That's how it wins. Not through spells, but through suggestion. A suggestion that maybe you're not that good. Maybe they were right about you. Maybe you should stop being so confident, so bold, so yourself. That's the real ritual, the breaking of belief. Because once you stop believing in who you are, you start working for them, even when you're not being paid to. You start dimming your energy just to survive the day. That's how they win the war before lunch break. Let's go deeper. Psychological witchcraft is when someone studies your emotional triggers like a blueprint. They know when to flatter you, when to humiliate you, when to isolate you, when to suddenly befriend you again. That push pull is not random, it's intentional conditioning. They want you reactive, not reflective, because when you react, you make mistakes. When you're reflective, you make moves. Ever notice how the office manipulator is usually charming, they're very helpful, or they're connected? They thrive off perception. That's their altar, the image of goodness they built to hide what they really do. Behind that charm is control. Behind that team player, energy is a need to dominate the flow of spirit in that environment. And make no mistake, every workplace has a flow, every office has an atmosphere. And when the wrong person becomes the center of that atmosphere, productivity dies, but control thrives. That's why you feel drained around certain people. They're not just talking, they're taking. They're using words to rewire the room. You walk in happy, you leave confused. You walk in confident, you leave questioning what you even bring to the table. That's not random, that's spiritual engineering, psychological witchcraft dressed as office culture. But here's what most people miss: these people don't always know they're being used. Some are just hosts. They carry unresolved envy, insecurity, or even childhood validation wounds. And when they see light, it triggers their darkness. See, the warfare begins subconsciously. They want you to shrink what reminds them of what they buried. So they manage you by manipulation. They mentor you by muting you, and they correct you by conceal their jealousy. Now, witchcraft in the workplace thrives where accountability is weak and silence is rewarded. That's why gossip is one of the sharpest tools. It's not just talking, it's spell casting through repetition. You hear a lie enough times, you start to question the truth. That's how they assassinate reputations while keeping their hands clean. They'll plant seeds like she's too emotional, he's difficult to work with, they think they're better than everybody. And suddenly everyone starts treating you like the words are true. That's a form of enchantment, spoken energy designed to change the perception of others before you even open your mouth. But the good news, light can't be buried forever. Every lie told about you becomes fertilizer for the truth if you stay grounded. You don't have to fight every battle. You just have to stop feeding the wrong ones. Withdraw your reaction, withhold your energy, redirect your focus. The more you try to prove yourself to the wrong spirits, the more you waste the oil that was meant for your assignment. Stop documenting and start documenting instead of defending. Start praying instead of panicking. Start observing enough, right? Instead of over explaining. That's how you reclaim power in hostile environments. And here's the twist most never see: witchcraft loses power the moment you see it for what it is. The illusion only works when you're blind to the manipulation. Once you recognize, oh, this isn't personal, it's spiritual, you stop taking the bait. You stop letting them make you the emotional entertainment for their control drama. The higher you rise, the subtler the warfare becomes. You're not just dealing with coworkers, you're dealing with spirits disguised as systems. That's why sometimes HR won't hear you. That's why the boss pretends they didn't see you. You're trying to solve a spiritual problem with physical policies. You can't file a complaint for envy. You can't submit a ticket for sabotage. But you can set spiritual boundaries that make it impossible for those energies to stay comfortable around you. And here's the key: your peace is your protection. Your silence is not weakness, it's insulation. You're not ignoring them, you're preserving your frequency. Because once you stop reacting, their witchcraft starts starving. Every manipulator needs an audience. Every energy thief needs a host. Once you stop supplying attention, they start suffocating in their own shadow. So walk in light, bless your workplace every morning, speak order before chaos wakes up. You don't have to match their energy, make them rise to yours. Because the same way darkness recognizes light, light also exposes darkness. In the end, every spell of sabotage, every whisper, every lie will collapse under the weight of truth. And when it does, they'll say it was luck, but you'll know it was alignment. Let's talk about the system behind the spirit. Because most people call it office politics. Is really a ritual of control that repeats in every hierarchy where power and insecurity meet. Every workplace has a few roles that never get written in the HR manual. We have the manipulator, the energy host, the silent enabler, and the chosen one marked for breaking. The manipulator is the one who hides behind charm and team player energy. They know how to shape perception, not performance. Their goal isn't to work, it's to work the room. They specialize in invisible warfare, conversation traps, passive aggressive compliments, emotional sabotage dressed up as advice, right? They're not feeding the team, they're feeding off of it. Now, the energy host, that's the one who doesn't start the fire, but they keep it burning. So they'll circulate gossip under the disguise of just updating you. They will amplify chaos by pretending to fix it. They always know just enough to stay relevant and always act just concerned enough to stay innocent. Then there's the silent enabler, the one in leadership who knows exactly what's going on but says nothing. They'll quote professionalism while watching character assassination unfold. They'll protect dysfunction because it protects their comfort. They're the gatekeeper that turns a spiritual battle into a corporate policy issue just to keep it quiet. And finally, there's the one chosen for testing, the target. Now, the one with the light too bright for the atmosphere they were hired into, the one whose work speaks louder than their words, that's usually the person marked for spiritual elimination through psychological exhaustion. See, witchcraft in the workplace isn't about always about religion. It's about ritual. The ritual of exclusion, the ritual of subtle humiliation, the ritual of forgetting to invite you to meetings you're supposed to lead. It's the group text you weren't added to. It's the project that got reassigned while you were out sick. And somehow, the same person managing you always ends up comforting you through the fallout they created. That's not professionalism. That's manipulation choreography. See, they work every work environment has an altar. Let me say this. Where truth is either sacrificed for comfort or protected at all costs. The most toxic workplaces, truth gets sacrificed daily. They'll crucify anyone who refuses to blend in with the system of silence. You start speaking up, and suddenly your attitude becomes the issue, not the injustice. You bring facts, they bring feelings. You bring clarity, they bring confusion. It's not about fairness, it's about control. And the one thing control can't stand is authenticity. Let's pull back even further. Why does this energy find so much success in offices, industries, and institutions? Because the corporate world thrives on hierarchy, and witchcraft thrives on hidden hierarchy. When people believe their position equals their power, they'll use their role like a throne. They'll weaponize policies to punish dissent. They'll spiritualize their insecurity as authority. And the more you try to reason with that energy, the more it feeds on your logic. That's why spiritual discernment matters as much as professional skills. You have you can have every degree, every qualification, every award, but if you don't know how to read the energy of a room, you walk into a trap smiling. Here's what people rarely admit. Some workplace sabotage isn't about your performance, it's about your presence. They don't want you gone because you're unqualified. They want you gone because your energy makes their spirits restless. You walk in carrying integrity, and integrity makes liars uncomfortable. You show up with peace, and peace makes chaos lose its job description. That's why you get overlooked. Not because you're not talented, but because your existence challenges the false order they built. Your light exposes every shadow pretending to be leadership. Your consistency convicts their convenience. You remind them that the system isn't sacred, but truth is. So, what do? They start small. They'll plant whispers. They shape narratives. They isolate the truth teller, make them look difficult, overly sensitive, or even spiritual. They'll even label you with professionalism words that sound neutral but hit like hexes. Uncooperative, not a team player, intense, abrasive. That's linguistic witchcraft, using words to alter how people perceive your energy. But documentary truth has receipts, right? And eventually, the atmosphere always reveals the architect. No matter how well they play innocent, patterns don't lie. You can manipulate perception, but you can't fake vibration. When you're aligned, your presence speaks for you. That's why your silence feels loud in toxic rooms. Your energy still testifies. And when truth starts testifying, witchcraft starts panicking. They'll rush to over explain, overshare, overcompensate because exposure terrifies deception. And that's when you start to see what you were really up against. You weren't fighting coworkers, you were fighting coordination. You weren't just being isolated, you were being studied. But here's the reversal: they studied you, but they forgot to study your covering. They underestimated the God that sent you. This is the part most don't understand. Every time they try to block you, they trained you. Every sabotage built your discernment. Every lie sharpened your leadership. Every no taught you strategy that no degree could ever offer. You didn't just survive the warfare, you graduated from it. So, yes, witchcraft exists in the workplace, but so does wisdom, protection, and power. You don't have to curse back, you just have to outlast it. You don't need revenge, you need record. You don't need to prove who you are, you need to remember it. The system can only hide darkness for so long. And when light breaks through, every false tongue starts to rip over and trip over the very lies it spoke. Watch how suddenly the same people who called you too much start saying they always believed in you. Watch how those who whispered against you start whispering about you in awe. They'll call it comeback, but you'll know it was resurrection because witchcraft can delay, but it can't delete destiny. So if you're listening right now and you're in that kind of environment, don't lose heart. You were placed there as a disruption to the ritual. You weren't sent to expose what everyone got used to calling normal. Your presence alone is prophecy, and every system that tried to bury you will one day have to acknowledge the seed it unintentionally planted. You don't have to fear, right? You don't have to fear what's unseen because what's unseen already fears your awareness. Once you know the game, you stop playing it. And when you stop it, you force the spirit behind it to retire. You ever notice how some people come to work, but they don't really come to work? They come to dominate the atmosphere. They come to control the flow of attention, to dictate whose light gets seen and who light gets them. That's not coincidence. That's witchcraft in human form. See, witches at work don't wear black hats. They wear smiles, they have titles, and they even wear nice shoes. They don't need candles when they've got control. Their rituals are disguised as leadership, as mentorship, or collaboration. They read your energy like a document. They study what makes you confident, what makes you uncertain, what makes you glow, and then they start targeting that exact thing. They disguise sabotage as structure. They'll weaponize policy to make your freedom look like insubordination. They'll gossip in circles but call it concern. They'll even form invisible alliances. And the moment you speak truth, suddenly you're aggressive. That's what they're doing is ancient. They're using influence to shape destiny. And in modern form, the office has become the altar. Emails are their incantations. Meetings are their rituals. Attention is their offering. The witch at work doesn't always hate you. Sometimes she admires you. And that's what drives the obsession. Because deep down, she can't understand why your peace stays stable when she's doing everything to shake it. Why your presence draws respect without you asking for it. Why your ideas land even when they pretend not to hear you. That's the trigger. Your authenticity breaks their illusion of power. They need people to fear them to feel valid. So when you show up calm, covered, and certain, you ruin their spell before it even starts. Let me tell you something real. Some witches don't know they're witches. They're so used to moving in envy and manipulation and control that it becomes a personal trait, a personality trait, that is. They grew up in competition, so they only feel alive when someone else's feels small. They don't see people, they see pawns. Every compliment has an agenda. Every mistake they catch you in is a quiet celebration. They feed off imbalance because equilibrium exposes their emptiness. Watch how they move. They always need an audience. They love whispering in groups, but they never confront truth alone. They'll warn others about you to secure loyalty. They'll use one coworker as bait to test what you'll say. They'll rotate people like chess pieces, keeping everyone slightly suspicious of each other. That's energetic confusion, a smokescreen to hide their guilt. Then there's the silent type. Those are the cold witches. They don't say much, they just withhold. They'll exclude you from emails, they'll ignore your suggestions, or forget to mention your name in meetings. They practice erasure. Their spell is silence. They drain you by making you invisible. The sad part, that these people often hold positions of influence. They've mastered the art of charm, the mask of professionalism. They'll say all the right things publicly while moving spiritually crooked privately. They'll talk diversity while secretly killing inclusion. They'll talk empowerment while undermining every powerful person who's not under their control. Let's get real. Witches at work survive off confusion. They thrive where accountability is low and emotional intelligence is rare. They need people who don't trust their intuition. They need environments where the truth gets labeled drama. That's how they keep power, through perception, not proof. And the reason you feel that heaviness after dealing with them, because they're projecting chaos into your spirit. They want you drained, second guessing, and spiritually tired enough to surrender your joy. They don't need you fired, they just need you tired. Because a tired person is easier to manipulate. Now, now where now here's where discernment saves you. You don't fight these people physically or emotionally. You observe them spiritually. You stop explaining yourself and start watching patterns. You start documenting dates and energy shifts. You stop reacting because reaction feeds their ritual. Understand this. Witches at work win by being right. They win by being believed. I correct myself. They don't win by being right. They win by being believed. So once you stop defending yourself, they lose the narrative they built around you. Once you stop responding to their setups, they expose themselves through desperation. You'll notice they start getting sloppy. They start talking too much, trying too hard to convince people because manipulation has an expiration date when truth starts walking around in confidence. And here's the truth most never realize. Every witch eventually becomes haunted by their own work. Every lie they plant starts echoing back. Every person they used gets tired of being used. The same spell they cast to silence others ends up isolating them because the energy of control always eats its own creator. So, if you're working around witches right now, don't lose yourself. Don't absorb your chaos. Your peace is your rebellion. Your consistency is your warfare. Keep showing up with excellence. That's how you outlast it. Because witchcraft loses oxygen in the presence of purpose. The higher you go, the lonelier it gets. Not because you're unliked, but because not everyone can breathe at your altitude. You weren't meant to be liked by low vibrations. You were meant to outlast them. So why don't you just stand firm? Don't let them rewrite your name, your narrative, or your purpose. The witch may start the war, but your truth can always end it. Let me tell you a story, not a rumor, not a parable. a story that happens every single day in offices and boardrooms and studios and in classrooms, just with different faces, different job titles, and the same spiritual undertone. There was a woman, let's call her Danielle. New job, fresh energy, doing everything right. She wasn't loud. She wasn't boastful. She just did her work, stayed focused, and stayed kind. She show up early, smile at everyone, treat the janitor the same way she treated the manager. That kind of light doesn't get unnoticed. And in most workplaces, light doesn't just attract opportunity, it attracts attention, all kinds of attention. At first, everyone liked her. They complimented her ideas. They copied her phrases in meetings. They invited her to lunch. But slowly, something shifted. You know, that subtle coldness that sneaks in without warning? When people who used to greet you to stop making eye contact? When laughter you stops the moment you walk into a room? That's the beginning of energy rearranging itself. See, Danielle didn't realize it, but she walked into an environment where hierarchy was sacred and insecurity was tradition. Her presence disrupted an unspoken order, one where mediocrity had been protected for years. So the witching began. It started with confrontation, it started with curiosity. Where did you go to school again? Who helped you get this position? Subtle questions with sharp undertones. They wanted to locate her roots, to understand how deep her foundation was before they tried to shake it. That's the first tactic, surveying the soul. Once they knew her rhythm, they started adjusting theirs. Emails would go out with her name missing. Meetings would accidentally get rescheduled without telling her. Her suggestions suddenly became team ideas, and somehow her work would appear under someone else's signature. She didn't say anything at first because she was raised to believe that hard work repeats itself. But in that kind of environment, silence doesn't protect you, it feeds their control. They mistook her grace for weakness, and that's when the second tactic came in, energy inversion. It's when they provoke you just to see if you can flip your peace into frustration. Every calm person becomes their favorite experiment. They'll test your tone, your patience, your emotional intelligence until they find a reaction they can label as attitude. And the day Danielle raised her voice, even slightly, it became legend. They didn't mention what she said before she spoke. They didn't mention the weeks of subtle disrespect. They only mentioned how unprofessional she was when she finally defended herself. That's how the spell spreads through selective storytelling. But by month 3, the workplace had fully shifted. She wasn't invited to lunch anymore. Her desk was moved to the far corner. Her manager stopped replying to her emails, and yet she kept showing up. Quiet, drained, but present. That's the third tactic, isolation by depletion. They don't need to fire you. They just need to make the air so heavy that you start packing your own spirit up before HR ever calls. They start removing access, one small door at a time. Information that used to flow freely becomes confidential. You'll find out about new projects in hallway whispers instead of team briefings. They'll tell you, "We thought you knew," when they know you didn't. They want to create confusion because confusion disconnects intuition. When you don't trust what you feel, you start depending on their version of the truth. That's psychological witchcraft 101. Then came the office meeting, the kind where the air feels rehearsed before it starts. Everyone smiling a little too perfectly, agreeing a little too quickly. Her name was brought up indirectly, of course. They say things like, some people have been having trouble adjusting to our culture. Culture, that word, is how the sharpest spells in the modern that's one of the sharpest spells in the modern workplace. They use it to disguise conformity. If your spirit doesn't bend, They say you're not aligned. That's how they spiritualize control. By month 5, Danielle stopped decorating her workspace. She stopped bringing lunch. She stopped laughing. That's how they knew it was working, because that's the fourth tactic: spiritual attrition. They drain the joy out of the routine until showing up feels like punishment. They don't destroy your body, they dismantle your belief in yourself piece by piece. Every compliment comes with a correction. Every success becomes a setup for the next critique. And when you finally burn out, they call it poor performance. They'll even make your departure look like it was your idea. Danielle just wasn't a good fit. She decided to pursue other opportunities. But behind those phrases are fingerprints of sabotage, emails that disappeared, recommendations withheld, a whole system of subtle hexes dressed as policy and personality. See, witches at work don't always stand around cauldrons. They build committees, they hold side meetings, they write vague memos, they twist HR language into spiritual language, energy fit, team alignment, cultural tone, and they convince the environment that exile was enlightenment. That's how modern witchcraft sustains itself, by convincing others that cruelty is correction. Now, here's the part that's never said out loud. They knew who Danielle was from day one. They recognized her before she even spoke. Light always makes darkness nervous. That's it's not what she did, it's what she carried. And in places built on power, peace feels like a threat. Danielle didn't lose her job that year. She left it. But she left changed. She started second guessing herself in new rooms. She became quieter, even in safe spaces. That's that's the fifth tactic: residual haunting. This is when the warfare doesn't stop when you walk out the door. It follows you through your memory, through doubt, through emotional fatigue. That's how you know it was never just office politics. And when you step back and look at it, none of it was accidental. Every cold smile, every delayed email, every half truth had timing too perfect to be coincidence, because witchcraft in the workplace is organized, it's coordinated, it's not chaotic. It studies light and sets up darkness to look like policy. So when people ask, what is energetic warfare? What is energetic warfare at work? Tell them it's not always the shouting or overt hate. It's the subtle erosion of confidence, the slow withdrawal of inclusion, the quiet applause when someone finally quits. It's how sabotage looks polite now, how spiritual warfare learned to smile for the camera. Danielle's story could be anyone's story: male or female, leader or even an intern, gifted or even the one that's overlooked. Because the system doesn't care what you look like, only what your light threatens to expose. And that's the truth people don't want to face. Witchcraft at work isn't always a personal attack. It's a systemic test to see who keeps their essence when the atmosphere turns against them. Who keeps walking even when every door starts closing? Who refuses to surrender their truth in the name of being professional? That's how witchcraft operates in the workplace, not through obvious evil, but through engineered exhaustion, through reputation warfare, emotional baiting, and spiritual gaslighting disguised as feedback. And it all works because so many are afraid to name what's really happening. But the truth, naming is the beginning of its collapse. So stay covered, stay conscious, and stay undefeated. See you on the next one. Bye bye.